On the Road with Kelly and Bob is brought to you by Mueller Metal Roofs and Buildings. Made in America, made to last. Coming up on this episode,
we're this odd conglomeration of history, botanicals, and plants that there's really just nothing like it.
We, the people of the United States of America.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for this episode of On the Road with Kelly and Bob. I'm Bob Phillips.
And I'm Kelly Phillips. It's something we know from grade school, or maybe even before. There are 50 states in the USA.
And each state is different. And each state is very much like the others.
But in all of the lower 48 states, one of them stands apart in a way that can't be matched. It's the state of Florida. And it's not just the fact that it's almost surrounded by ocean waters. It's that Florida has plant and animal life that you won't find anywhere else.
And the fate of this delicate system is in the hands of an army of staff and volunteers led by a man efficiently named Keith Clark.
I grew up in Indiana, and I went to school in Ohio for architecture. And I worked in Washington, D.C. as an architect for about 10 years or so. And then I decided to become an entrepreneur, and I opened up a clothing store in Washington, D.C., and I did that for about another 9 years. And while I was doing that, I was also fundraising for nonprofit arts organization and AIDS organizations at the same time. And that's how I got involved in nonprofit leadership. And I took a part-time job here planning events. And then they found out that I could raise money, and 2 years later I was managing director here.
That's the key, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, nonprofit, you know.
Yeah, now I'm CEO.
Keith Clark never dreamed he would be where he is today doing what he's doing. But he now knows it is fate or destiny or something.
What was it that attracted you to the nonprofit world in the beginning?
I liked feeling like I was doing something to help the bigger good. And, you know, I've always been an artist, so I paint, and, you know, my architecture was, I like to render, so I've always been an artist, so I've always been drawn to the arts. So when I decided I wanted to raise money, I wanted to do it for the arts. And so that's where my passion is, so that's why I started to do it.
Just because it needed to be done.
It needed to be done, and I liked doing it, and it was a passion.
Welcome to Flamingo Gardens in Broward County, South Florida. 60 acres of lush gardens and fascinating wildlife.
These botanical gardens are the keepers of an ecosystem that's disappearing too fast from this state. And when it's gone for good.
It all started when a couple from the Midwest moved here in the 1920s, hoping to acquire land. But a hurricane and an orange grove changed their plans, and the end result was the conservation of a very special place.
So originally, in 1927, Floyd and Jane Ray, they actually moved down here from Illinois, but they moved down here as part of the real estate boom, you know, because they were draining the swamps at that time, and so there was all this land that they were selling speculative land, and then the hurricane hit, wiped it out, and there was no more real estate. So they were down here, and they were like, what are we going to do? So they decided they would buy some land, and they would start growing summer oranges down here, because there was a new species of orange that had been introduced that ripened and could be sold during the summer. And so they bought I think 320 acres or something down here, and they planted summer oranges.
And today the summer orange grove is gone. And what the Rays left behind is one of the most beautiful and authentic botanical gardens anywhere in America.
It is a microcosm of the South Florida Everglades, a wildlife sanctuary, and a learning center like no other. Here you can go on a tour and feel like you've seen something from another world, a world the people who support this place are trying to keep alive.
And so originally this opened as an orange grove, and they had a botanical garden that was set up as like a demonstration garden where they could show different kinds of citrus trees and stuff. They got trees and plants and flowers from all around the world from a U.S. Department of Agriculture program that would ship all kinds of plants here to see if they could grow in South Florida as part of an agricultural product. So most of the arboretum that is here is that demonstration garden that they started in 1927. So most of the trees that you're going to see when you go through the garden are 75 to 100 years old, and they're huge trees for Florida. And the other interesting thing is, now remember, most of South Florida was covered by Everglades, and they had just drained the swamp a few years before. Before that happened, there was a series of islands called Long Key, and there was about 7 islands that sat in the middle of the Everglades, and 3 of those islands are Flamingo Gardens. So it's higher elevation than elsewhere in Broward County. So we have the second highest elevation in Broward County, which we call Mount Flamingo. It's 22. It's 22.
It's so big.
Yeah, it's 22 feet above sea level.
Oh, well, that's a mountain in Florida.
That's a mountain in Florida. So we jokingly call it Mount Flamingo.
What will people see when they visit here?
You're gonna see like old Florida jungle growth. So this isn't jungle growth like in South America. It's jungle growth Florida style. So you have to remember, Florida, yes, we get 60 inches of rain a year, which is a lot of rain, but it all comes during the rainy season. And during the drought season, we have drought. So these plants are different than the Amazon and the rainforest.
Where they get rain every day.
Where they get rain every day, so they have to be able to survive a drought. So that's why it's all the more important that we continue to grow and expand, and we continue to do those kind of collections and look out for those plants as well as animals. So it's not just animals. Our philosophy is that we're sanctuary for living creatures, period. But it's a contract between all of us in order to survive.
Fortunately, there are botanical gardens all over America. We've set aside land in every state so that our children and our grandchildren and their children will someday see what our planet looked like.
But here at Flamingo Gardens, you will see things you just won't find anywhere else. And Keith Clark says not only was this place meant to be here, he was meant to be in this place.
When I came here, it was like, I don't know, it's like God just set me here. It was like something just brought me here, and like everything aligned. They needed me, I needed it. It was everything I could possibly want. It was plants, animals, nature, art, everything all in one thing. And they needed me and I needed them. And then when I got here, I'm like, oh, I can make a difference here. I can do something, and that's where the journey has led me.
You were meant to be here.
So I was meant to be here. Yeah, I really do feel like I was meant to be here.
Flamingo Flamingo Gardens is a real treat, and like Keith said, it is a respite from the hustle and bustle life that most of us live.
We got to take a personal guided tour of the grounds, and it's pretty spectacular what you're going to see there if you plan to visit. Be sure and set aside time to take the tram trip, easy for me to say, around the property to get the full story.
Well, let's go back to the conversation with Keith Clark, starting with a little bit more about how he ended up there at Flamingo Gardens, followed by a bit of history of the place and what you'll see there.
I worked in order so I could afford to do what I like to do, which was raise money for the art. So. And then I decided, well, that's silly. Why not just have that help pay? Why not do that for a living instead?
Because then it's not really working, right?
Right. You don't really think of that as a job path, as a career. When I was growing up, my parents was like, what are you going to do with your life? At 14, they're like, you haven't decided a profession yet, and they were both engineers. So they always wanted to be an engineer. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to be an engineer. I'm an artist. I want to be an artist. And like, no, you can't be an artist.
That's not a job.
That's not a job. You can't make money at that. And so I compromised and I said architecture, and they were okay with that. So that's, since I was like 7th grade, that has been my career path, was to be an architect. And then when I got the degree and started doing it, I'm like, this is not what I wanted. This is not what I want to do for my life.
You do realize that what they did was coax you into the compromise.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
architecture is engineering and art put together.
Totally. I'm very aware of that. And when I chose it, I knew it was a compromise. But I've learned a lot being here. I've always loved animals. I've always loved plants. In fact, when I was growing up, we grew up on a tree farm in southern Indiana. And we had
This is like a full circle.
Yeah, it is. It was like 40 acres, and I had to get up and mulch and weed and all that stuff, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I told my mother I was going to move to the city and I was going to pave my entire yard.
And he was 3 at the time.
Yeah,
and now look at him.
And I did. I moved to the city, but then as I became an adult, I was like, house plants started to creep into my house. And
Funny how that
Then I
happens.
started gardening in my backyard.
He didn't mind the mulching so much at that point.
And so when I came here and I started working here, my mother really laughed. This place has been here 100 years now, and don't you want it to be here for another 100 years more? The way it's just exploding in populations, this is a little 60-acre green pocket in the middle of
Concrete.
expanding townhouses everywhere.
This is the Garden of Eden.
Yeah,
Really,
Like even when I started working here 15 years ago, Flamingo Road, all those houses were not there. Like it was fields. It was nurseries all along that road, and now it's houses all the way around us. So every day it gets more important to save this little piece of property. So not only is it important just for us as humans to have a green spot, some serenity, get away to, but it's also ecologically important, and it's also really important to the birds for migration, et cetera, to have this little area to land in. And it's archaeologically important because when it was an island, that was where the Tequesta people and later the Seminole people, that's where their camps would have been. That's where they hunted. That's where they lived. That's where their burial grounds were. So these 3 islands probably have all kinds of artifacts if we were to dig in that. But we don't do that. It's important to us that we try and preserve them as much as possible. So we have about 5 acres back in the back that is preserved kind of like what it would have been 100 years ago. So people can see, like, this is what Florida hardwood hammock, our version of a rainforest, looked like 100 years ago. Because you can't see that many places.
You mentioned a serene place to go.
Yeah.
Why is that important to humans?
Well, surprisingly, we just did a poll a couple years ago of all of our members, and we thought animals were going to be by far the biggest reason why they came here, It wasn't. Serenity was the number one response.
Because we don't have it.
Because we don't have any. And even though when I walk out here, I still hear the traffic from Flamingo Road, I still hear airplanes going over. The majority of people that don't come here don't hear that, because all they hear is the quiet and the birds and the peacocks shrieking and the animals and the kids running around and playing. And it's, even though it's not quiet, it's serene. It's
Peaceful.
It's peaceful, and there's not many places that can offer that now. Mm-hmm. So when Mr. Ray died, he left an endowment, and Mrs. Ray created the Floyd L. Ray Memorial Foundation, and they changed the name from Flamingo Groves, which was the citrus orchard, to Flamingo Gardens. And then when she died in the late 60s, then the Floyd L. Ray Memorial Foundation took over, and they established a Everglades wildlife sanctuary. So it was one of the first of its kind in the country. The Avery opened in 1989, I believe, and it was built specifically for permanently injured wading birds that couldn't be released back into the wild.
Wow.
So all of our animals here are native Florida wildlife that have been rehabilitated from some sort of injury, or they've been rescued in some way, and they can't be released back out into the wild.
Because they wouldn't survive.
Because they wouldn't survive, correct. So like our bear, for example, which we have, our bear Josh was raised as a birthday party cub, if you can believe it. He was raised as a cub to take the birthday parties. Mm-hmm. And once he got about 2 years old, he was too big, so he went into an 18 by 18 cage for the rest of his life.
That's not fair.
Concrete, no sky. And when he was about 14, we rescued him. He's been with us a long time.
And probably flourishing now.
Yeah, and when he first got here, he had never touched grass before, so he didn't want to come out of the crate because he was afraid to touch the grass. And then when he did, he just rolled in it and looked up at the sky for like an entire day because he hadn't seen the sky.
Were you here when that happened?
I was here when that happened.
How did that make you feel?
Oh my God, Josh is probably the most beloved animal here across the board. All of us feel so connected to him.
Who are the people that come here?
All kinds of people. I mean, our demographics are so diverse. It's really hard to. People say, "Well, what's your demographic?" It's really hard to say because they're everybody. It really is. It's. I'd say we're about 55% locals and about 45% out-of-state tourist visitors, and we run anywhere from young moms with kids, young families, to seniors, to teenagers that volunteer here. I'd say there's a gap, like little kids between 3 and 12 are really taken with the place, and then once they hit 12, they're kind of like over it. And then they come here after college and volunteer again, and then they bring their kids here. I mean, we've got grandparents that are bringing their grandkids here now that came here when they were kids. So it really covers the whole gamut.
Because it's become important to them.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I guess because there's no place like it. We're not your typical botanical garden. We try to be better at that, but there's a certain charm in the natural rusticness of this overgrown jungle. And it's really hard to keep it all pruned and maintained and pristine, so we just don't try. You know, at this point we're like, it's a jungle, let it be a jungle. So if, people that are looking for a botanical garden, this may not be what they expect because it's not, you don't have your rose gardens and your flowers it's a more natural garden than it. Up north you would call them a woodland garden. It's a tropical jungle basically. We're this odd conglomeration of history, botanicals, and plants that there's really just nothing like it. So the tram tour and the wildlife presentation, those are our two critical pieces. Those are the two opportunities we really have to tell people about what it is that we do. So the tram and the That's people talking directly to them. So we can get through a certain amount of messaging and education during those two things. Then we have our signage, that's another layer. And now we've added our app, that's a third level. That really gets into the detail and you can take home with you and you can really start to scroll, and dig down into all of it. And then we have all of our education classes as well. We have the Eco Tours now, which is a volunteer program that concentrates on environmental education and particularly climate change initiatives and, giving particularly younger people an opportunity to feel like they can make a difference and not just feel overwhelmed by it all. Because I think even as an adult myself, every day these days I just want to throw my hands up in there and say, what can I do? I'm one person, I can't do anything, and it's so frustrating. But that's not really true. We can all do our part, whatever that piece is. We can all make a difference in our own way and follow that path. And I hope that when people come here, they're inspired in some small way to go back to their home and try and make a difference, whether that's putting out a bird feeder or maybe not using pesticide or remembering us whenever there's a bird injured and they think, oh, I can take it to Flamingo Gardens to get that bird rehabilitated or something like that. That's what keeps me going here, is that whole drive to encourage other people to make a difference too.
The reason why Flamingo Gardens got its name was that supposedly there was a nest of flamingos along the road whenever they moved in here. And so that's where the name Flamingo Groves came from. And then in the 50s, Mrs. Ray brought flamingos here to the gardens as part of the tourist attraction. And she also introduced peacocks at that time. And we've had them ever since. So all the parrots, of course, have been surrendered by their former owners.
Okay.
And usually it's because the mother, the parents died or something, and the kids don't want to, but parents become very attached to their owners. And so when they're given up, they develop anxiety. So in 1981, the International Haliconia Society was founded here in Flamingo Gardens, and this was a repository for all of their haliconias and gingers, etc. So we started restoring the collection that we have, and because it was all overgrown, so we've been introducing new haliconias and gingers. So those are some of my favorite gingers right there.
Yes.
Beehive gingers, but you'll find them throughout the whole garden. There's hundreds of varieties of different haliconias and gingers. So I'm just gonna park this cart right here.
Okay.
And then we're gonna walk down this way. These are all the different kinds of hawks that are native to Florida. Again, all these are injured. They have nesting pads here, so they're kind of set up in breeding couples. So if they breed, then we can release the babies back out into the wild.
So you wouldn't raise the babies because it's all about...
Correct. So we usually take them off exhibit after they get so big so that they can go back in the back and not be imprinted by humans as much. So we let the parents raise them, but then we take them off exhibit until they're ready to go, and then we release them back to the wild. So that's all the different hawks. These are all the different owls on down. So you have the barn owl, you have the barred owl, you have the screech owl, the burrowing owl, etc. Great horned owl. This is one of my favorites.
Oh, it's beautiful.
So this is the aviary. This is what started the Everglades Wildlife Sanctuary. This opened up in '89, and this is, at the time when we opened, there were like 7 birds in here, and I've seen it as full as over 250 different wading birds in there. The aviary is set up with the different ecosystems of the Everglades. So you've got your shore area, you've got your mangrove area, your cyclist swamp, your hardwood hammock, your sawgrass area, the different areas to kind of give people an idea of the different birds that would live in those different ecosystems. Now, obviously, it's all in one area, so the birds kind of go all over the place, but it's surprising how they do kind of generally stay in their ecosystem.
Really?
Yeah, it is pretty surprising. Like you'll always see the pelicans here in the shore area. You'll find a lot of the rosettes, spoonbills, and the herons and stuff in the mangrove and cypress swamp area in there. And ducks more in the sawgrass part of it. The guy that's standing up right there with the weird head,
Yeah.
that's a wood stork, because his neck kind of looks wooden. Those are critically endangered in Florida now. So this is a hardwood hammock here.
Okay.
So this is kind of like a little mini version of the the Florida rainforest. That's the Ray Home Museum straight ahead, which was their summer home in the 30s. They would come here on the weekends because it was cooler here than it would be in Hollywood where they live.
While on our tour, we ran across the wildlife supervisor for Flamingo Gardens, Miranda De Palma. She had some more great stuff for us about this unique place.
This is our flamingo pond. We have 3 of the 6 flamingo species. We have our American Caribbeans, which is Mr. James right here. He's my youngest is 7. We also have our Chilean, that is the one with the yellow legs, light pink feathers. And then we have our greater flamingos that are from Africa. So we have 3 of the 6, which is pretty impressive.
So what's the most common question you get asked about? Oh, you like that. How do they turn pink? Okay, you got to answer.
Flamingos are not true pink birds. They actually start out
You don't want that.
gray color. They get this coloration from something called carotenoids. Carotenoids are naturally found inside of shrimp, krill, brine, and algae. So they need that to help them keep this beautiful pink coloration. But some of them, like our greater flamingos and our Chilean flamingos, they're going to be a little bit lighter because they're going to have different predators. So they don't need to be as vibrant pink as, say, James does. You're being silly today. It's okay. I know. I'm watching you. It's like working with a toddler. Like, I've been here since he hatched, so like, he knows me, I know him, I know every little movement. Honestly, working with animals is like working with children. You got to watch that body language, and once you see it, you know if they're going to go running or not. So it's kind of the same with him. Like, I'm watching him with his neck and everything. But I love working here, so it's the best job, I got to say that. This next year I'll be here 10 years, so.
Are Elvis and Priscilla out? I don't see them.
Elvis and Priscilla.
That's our giant alligator.
Oh.
I was about to say, here's a little one, but
So these are the babies. So the reason why they're called Elvis and Priscilla is because you remember Miami Vice?
yes.
Crockett had the alligator on his boat. That was Elvis that they brought from here every day down to shoot. And that was Elvis the first. So he's passed on since then, and so this is the 3rd.
And like what I love to tell people is that all of our enclosures are tailored to each one of these animals. So we understand that people love to see them and it's a great time being able to see them, but it's always that rare sighting that you see that you're like, oh, that's amazing. But we make it so that these animals feel like they're in the wild and not in captivity because they don't deserve this.
A bit of sad news here. In January, Flamingo Gardens lost Josh, their beloved black bear that lived on the grounds. He was 27 years old, which is very much a senior citizen for black bears.
The good news is that since he was rescued many years ago, Josh has lived a good life and was loved by all.
I feel like in our own little way, this little quiet garden here is making a difference in South Florida in a much bigger way. And we're doing what we set out to do, and we're saving this for future generations. Because, in another 20 years, think this little piece of green is going to be even greener compared to the surrounding area. Oh. And it's going to be even more. I mean, this could be Central Park someday, we were going, So I think it's really important that we continue to just keep this as much.
Let me try something on you here. We've got 50 states that make up the United States of America. Alaska's Alaska and Hawaii's Hawaii. They're very, very different. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the rest of the states, especially you go through the Midwest, while they have their differences, there's a lot that's the same. I've always felt that Florida is Florida alone. And this is something here you don't find in the rest of the continental United States anyway.
Yeah, and I would go a little bit further. South Florida is completely different because we're like zone 11. So
Yeah.
we're the only zone 11 besides Hawaii. So a lot of the plants that we have here can only be growing here, because even if they went up to Orlando or St. Augustine, they wouldn't be able to survive the cooler winter. So there's Florida's almost 3 different states. There's the north, there's the middle, and the south. But like the cycads in our cycad garden, those are one of the most endangered plants on the planet. And mind you, cycads were here when dinosaurs were here. So they have lasted all these many decades. We built the cycad garden back there in 2019, particularly because of that. Because if botanical gardens don't save those, they won't survive. They'll go extinct.
Do you realize all of this all together here at Flamingo Gardens makes this place significant, not just to South Florida, but to our entire country? Because
Yeah.
we don't have this anywhere else.
Right, yeah, totally.
And thanks for listening to this week's edition of On the Road with Kelly and Bob, part of the USA 250 tour. We're hitting every state in America as part of the 250th birthday this year. You don't want to miss it, so follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and you can even check out our video that we post on our YouTube page. It's On the Road with Kelly and Bob. Listen wherever you get your podcast or download that free Odyssey app. Listen anytime, anywhere.